Well, the party leadership did not support Mamdani in New York, and he won. Party leadership is not supporting Platner in Maine, and I think he's going to win. So I think it is, I think there is a growing understanding that leadership and defending the status quo and the inequalities that exist in America is not where the American people are.
So we've got some updates on the internal drama currently playing out within the Democrat Party, both as it pertains to Zohran Mamdani and the government shutdown, because believe it or not, these two issues are very closely connected in the sense they are both prime examples of how the radical, militant, insane, far-left progressives are essentially holding Chuck Schumer and the Democrat establishment hostage at every single turn. Because as it pertains even to the government shutdown, I think there was a widespread belief, both among Democrats and Republicans, that once Tuesday's elections were over, the Democrats would immediately move to reopen the government. Because after all, they really did it so that way the federal workers and the EBT recipients would show up to vote in high enough numbers, and then we can end our insane temper tantrum after that. And we did see signals from Jeffries and Schumer, maybe that was going to be their move. And then the progressives basically stepped in. And I kid you not, Bernie Sanders physically hijacked the press conference of Chuck Schumer in order to essentially send a message. Absolutely not. That is not happening, and he's far from alone. We got Senator Chris Murphy, we got Congresswoman Jamila Prayapal, however the freak you say her name, and this is all getting very interesting. So as a result of all of it, you have some Democrats trying to make even more demands. Chuck Schumer sent a ridiculous proposal to the Republicans that he absolutely knows will be rejected and will be rejected. And so at this point, guys, I have no clue when this shutdown is going to end. Is it going to take planes falling out of the sky as Americans are trying to visit their families on Thanksgiving to get someone to break on this? I have absolutely no idea, but it is what it is. We, of course, know the progressives are absolutely running the show. Don't let anyone, by the way, as you watch this, tell you in 2026 as they're running their Senate campaigns that, I'm a Chuck Schumer Democrat. We're not playing it to Zohran Mamdani or whatever. No, literally, again, the Bernie Sanders lunatics are running the entire Democrat Senate caucus. So keep that in mind for you swing states who think you're voting for some type of sensible moderate, some type of John Fetterman style figure. No, absolutely that is not the case. This is the Democrat Party now, and I think it is so telling, and we'll kind of run you through that in today's video. So guys, do us a favor, if you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, so this was the letter sent to President Trump, literally again, the morning after the elections this week, so it sounds like they're doing what we expected. Axios and others were reporting that Democrats plan to reopen the government right after the elections ended. And it said here, "Dear President Trump, we write to demand a bipartisan meeting of legislative leaders to end the GOP shutdown of the federal government and decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis. Democrats stand ready to meet with you face-to-face, anytime, any place. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer." So maybe to some degree it's a little bit mocking, but, is that the direction people thought they were going in? There was speculation about that, and then you immediately saw Democrat senators like Chris Murphy, more on the progressive side, say, absolutely not. No compromise with the Republicans. They better give us everything that we want.
Zohran Mamdani, is he the future of the party? And how do Democrats combat Republicans demonizing him? I mean, a lot of people believe he is going to be on ads across the country and as a kind of a target for Republicans.
Yeah, I think the future of the party is Zohran and Abigail and Mikey. Right. The future of the party is that we're a Big Ten party. I think there will be some pretty substantial damage done to a Democratic brand that has been rehabilitated if on the heels of an election in which the people told us to keep fighting, we immediately stop fighting. If we surrender without having gotten anything and we cause a lot of folks in this country who had started to believe in the Democratic Party to retreat again, I worry that it will be hard to sort of get them back up off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle.
So if you comb through what he's saying, that's a pretty interesting admission, is it not? Did you notice that? He's basically admitting the reason why Democrats are prolonging this government shutdown is because they need to find a reason to appease their radical and insane voter base, aka the people who elected Zohran Mamdani. And what is that really about? It's not necessarily in terms of, the progressives are super popular. After all, we did break down how even in New York freaking city, Zohran Mamdani is finishing with give or take 50% of the vote, which is a huge repudiation, actually, of how progressives might be nationwide, considering you can't get close to 70 or 80 in New York City, which Democrats historically do. But they're, of course, scared of what? Primary challenges, maybe when it comes to turning out or energizing the voter base, even in a general election. They want to make sure we're fighting. And so apparently that means, again, translating to them, that these violent, insane lunatics, the No Kings crowd, all of these characters, if planes are not falling out of the sky on Thanksgiving, and the people that we claim are starving are not starving, in order to prove a point against Donald Trump or something, that's going to be enough. I don't exactly know. But, immediately, right? So some speculation, remember that they would end the shutdown or they'd start to give in. And then what happened? A bunch of the more progressives, including Chris Murphy here, a bunch of the more progressive Democrat senators essentially got on TV and said, absolutely not. And I thought perhaps the most telling and shining example of this came just a few days ago. I believe this was actually the morning after the election, when Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was set to do his little press conference on the government shutdown. And I'm not even making this up. So Chuck Schumer basically arrived late, and what literally happened here is that Bernie Sanders just hijacked the press conference. He just showed up to the podium and just started talking. And when you hear what he says, I think it becomes pretty clear. This whole thing was, yes, again, the progressives who are holding that Democrat Party hostage, trying to prove a point, actually trying to actively threaten Schumer. You better not cave. You better not give an inch. And yeah, who's running the show? I think you know the answer.
Oh, Senator Sanders, come on over.
No, you're waiting for Senator Schumer, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Because I could represent the Bernie Buzz. It's a leading publication from one of them.
Are you going to ask him a question? Are you going to ask him a question? Are you joining him for the press? Just want to hear him out. Do you want to tell us what you think about last night? You want to take the podium until he gets here?
Am I invited to take the podium?
I mean, yeah.
That's a good sign. I agree with it.
What are your takeaways from last
My takeaways is there are many reasons why people win an election and lose an election. What happens in Virginia or New Jersey and New York City, it's a bit different. But I think there was a common theme last night, and that is people all over this country are rejecting Trumpism. They understand that it is a horrific situation when 20+ million people are going to see a doubling, or in some cases a tripling, in the healthcare premiums when they can't afford it, when 15 million people are going to be thrown off of their healthcare because of massive cuts to Medicaid. So I think that one of the reasons, of many, that the Democrats had so much success is an appreciation that Democrats are trying to protect healthcare for the American people. Now, I know that there is some discussion about bipartisan negotiations. And I want to be very clear. If these negotiations say that we're going to pass legislation that will extend the credits, tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, count me in, that's great. But there has to be a commitment that the Speaker of the House is on board. There has to be a commitment that the President of the United States is prepared to sign the bill. Bottom line is, we need to be successful in protecting the health care of the American people. And if it's just a piece of legislation that passes the Senate with either 50 votes or 60 votes, so what? Where does it go? Then it becomes just a meaningless gesture. You can go home, well, I voted for a piece. That's good. But the real truth is, will we protect the health care of the American people? That is what this whole shutdown is about. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I don't want to read too much into anything, but folks, that is as straightforward as basically a threat that you can make, okay? Here you have Bernie Sanders showing up to Chuck Schumer's press conference uninvited And even the media were not expecting. They're like, oh, Bernie, what are you doing here? You weren't invited, right? And he's going to sit there and ominously stand in the back and just watch, right? Stare right through Chuck Schumer, basically threatening him, like your boss evaluating you or something from the back of the room and just like, okay, or the teacher grading your presentation, right? And then if that wasn't obvious enough, he then gets up on the stage and basically says, Chuck Schumer, you better not cave. Like, it cannot be more on the nose than that. But if you still don't believe me, okay, take a listen to what happens next when it comes to the question of the progressive mandate and Zohran Mamdani, right? Again, what are the progressives basically trying to say? I am the captain now. We run your freaking show. We're taking over, and you better listen to us. And that includes, right, the government shutdown. So here's what he had to say about Mamdani and the relationship directly with party leadership and Chuck Schumer.
Well, the party leadership did not support Mamdani in New York, and he won. Party leadership is not supporting Plattner in Maine, and I think he's going to win. So I think it is, I think there is a growing understanding that leadership and defending the status quo and the inequalities that exist in America is not where the American people are.
Yeah, literally spoken off script at the podium of Chuck Schumer, where he was not invited and is not even supposed to be speaking up here right now, at the very moment in time when, of course, we all remember Chuck Schumer did not endorse Zohran Mamdani and would not clarify whether or not he voted for him. So we clearly see what is going on here, right? Even if Zohran wants to try to play diplomacy with Hakeem or Schumer, which he's doing at the moment, you have Bernie Sanders speaking on his behalf, essentially saying, no, Schumer, I'm sending you a message, and you better make sure the planes are falling out of the sky, right? And by the way, he's far from the only one. Take a listen here to some more reporting on other Democrat members of the Senate and of Congress who are sending very similar, pretty openly transparent threats to Chuck Schumer when it comes to, quote unquote, fighting hard enough for the No Kings movement or something like that. Oh, and let us not forget that all of this news is coming on the very exact week where Nancy Pelosi is announcing she is retiring from Congress, not running for re-election. Not just because of her old age, but also because she knows she's about to face some pretty prominent progressive primary challengers. So, another factor here to consider.
Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing she will not run for re-election next year, ending a nearly 40-year career in Congress. Let's get right to Aisha Hasni. She's live on Capitol Hill with more on that for us. Hello, Aisha.
Sandra, the question now is who follows her? Who's next when it comes to retirements here on Capitol Hill? Nancy Pelosi making this announcement on X by posting this video here as a goodbye to San Francisco, her district. She doesn't give a clear answer, a clear reason as to why she is stepping aside now, but everybody knows she's part of this old guard in the Democratic Party that's been hanging on to power for decades now. Well, that all might be changing after the big Mamdani win Tuesday night. Progressive AOC made it very clear the establishment needs to get out of their way. The very next day, Senator Bernie Sanders crashed Chuck Schumer's press conference and criticized leadership for not supporting Mamdani. And now, yet another progressive is saying Tuesday should be a warning to Schumer, who, by the way, did not endorse Zohran Mamdani for mayor. Watch this.
Is it time for him to maybe take a note from Speaker Nancy Pelosi?
I think everybody has to understand what the mood in the country is, that people want fighters.
Should Tuesday's election be a warning to him that he's got to...
Absolutely. I think it should be a warning. Just caving to the easiest road, and not getting a victory, not using our power for what we need to use is I think is not going to be acceptable.
So you're not calling on Schumer to step aside right now?
I got to go.
She had to go. She didn't want to answer that question, Sandra. Look, Republicans are trying to seize Tuesday's election night wins to attack Democrats and say that it's a party of the far left, which really is leaving these moderates, these centrists, kind of on an island by themselves where they have to fight the messaging from the GOP and also now from progressives.
Yeah, again, pretty transparent threats, extremely on the nose. I don't think we exactly need to decode anything they're saying. I think they just said it to Chuck Schumer's face there. And you wonder why the government shutdown still shows no signs of remotely ending? Yeah, there's your answer. Because these people are in charge. Now, it's worth noting, as we've brought up before, that the progressives are actually factually wrong about this, okay? the Zohran wave was not really that popular. We did cover, right? Zohran barely got 50%, but you look at his clones in mayoral elections in other far left cities across the country. Minneapolis, Omar Fateh, the Somali socialist guy, got defeated by 10 points. Last night, Decision Desk just called the Seattle mayoral election for the incumbent and not the crazy YDSA pro-Antifa progressive Katie Wilson. So it's like you can't even win in deep blue cities, but somehow you think you're going to take it to even a light blue state or a swing state or even red states, right? And you think you're going to have a great performance in the midterms. It's terrible and awful logic. Actually, as a matter of fact, the two Democrat candidates that really overperformed and basically blew out the Republicans in what could have been close races were Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. You know what happened there. But, and say what you will about them, okay? Not a fan, and they definitely were lying to people. But in the general election, they both ran really like moderate milquetoast campaigns. So if anything, the election is a referendum saying that the moderate Democrats are still the best electoral option, not the progressives. But the issue obviously that Schumer faces is that general elections and primaries are not the same thing. See, in a primary, turnout is lower. The most energized parts of the voter base are going to decide it. And as Andrew Cuomo learned, as Jacob Fry learned in the DFL election that it turns out later on was stolen, but as Harold, the incumbent mayor of Seattle, learned in the Democrat primary, but then he won the general, right? This is a huge threat, and that's what they're trying to ward off, and that's exactly why, right? You're seeing Schumer basically say, okay, yeah, we're not going to end the shutdown. Now, that said, I want to talk about this too, we did just get the proposal from Democrat leadership in terms of what they're saying they now would do in order to end the shutdown, right? So breaking news here from Axios. Schumer will say today that Democrats would vote to end the shutdown in exchange for a 1-year extension of the expiring Obamacare tax credits, according to Axios. As I'm sure you know by now, those tax credits have been basically what the Democrats are saying they need now in order to end the shutdown and vote for the continuing resolution. Except, first of all, I think you can clearly see the problem with this is that the extension is 1 year long. Which means what? Well, first of all, in order to understand what Democrats are trying to do here, and it's extremely dirty, maybe even dirtier than shutting down the government to try to win an election as they did to begin with, I think we should first of all understand what these Obamacare tax credits actually are and what they do. So to make a long story short, you're talking about something that generally applies only to people who, first of all, do not get employer-based insurance, right? You don't have health insurance from your job, so it's coming from you buying it on Marketplace, right? It's only applies to Marketplace premiums. And for those who, essentially, depending on how many kids and dependents you have, who are making between $60,000 to $80,000 or less, but not necessarily people in poverty, right? Because that's Medicaid. It's more like working class people who usually are working as independent contractors, and that's why they're receiving cheaper health insurance premiums, and that's who this applies to, and that's why they're on the Marketplace for health insurance, right? So basically, to make a long story short, the government, through Obamacare, subsidized it for those people, so they're getting cheaper premiums. Now, the issue, of course, with Obamacare, and the reason why overall health insurance went way through the roof, and Democrats, despite all their virtue signaling, everyone knows, actually made healthcare way more expensive, is because when you're throwing a bunch of mandates and regulations in terms of insurance has to cover this, and that, and then there's very little liquidity to essentially customize your health insurance plan, or you're putting a bunch of subsidies into it, which overall raises the cost for everyone else, right? For many of you who are not in that narrow bracket of independent contractor, financially in the working class, your health insurance is actually much more expensive because of these types of subsidies and tax credits than everyone else. But anyways, to make a long story short, so because, right, of the fact that they're getting these subsidies, and notice how they want to extend it for exactly 1 year from now. What's going to happen right before the 2026 midterms? You notice that? The whole point of extending it 1 year is because they know in about October of 2026, a bunch of the people receiving these tax credits and subsidies are going to receive a letter from their insurance provider saying, hey, starting in 2027, your health insurance premium is going to go up, whether it's double, triple, as these people are saying. And then, much like they did with federal workers and EBT recipients during the shutdown, oh, let me show up to the polls to vote Democrat, right? Or heck, maybe they'll even shut down the government again to demand a 1 year extension of this. We could absolutely see that happen the second time, right? So this is a really dirty trick. This is absolutely something that Republicans should not fall for. The good news is that Republicans outright said, John Thune, we're not taking this deal. They see right through exactly the dirty game here that Democrats are trying to play. But that said, I guess I'd like to close by asking you guys a question, which is, what do you think the Republicans should do here? Because the problem I see is that if Republicans simply let these tax credits expire and do nothing else, right, provide no alternative, then even if everyone else's and premiums kind of go down, right, in terms of that working class, and not like poor people leeching off welfare, but actual working class people who are contracting and stuff, and that, by the way, in the Midwest, for example, probably a big part of the GOP's political coalition, if you just raise their health insurance, that is going to be terrible for the 2026 midterms, right? That's awful, right? So what I've been saying, my proposal has been, this is actually the time for Republicans to finally present something on healthcare, right? Basically repeal and replace Obamacare with a more free market solution that wouldn't just protect low premiums for like one cohort of people, but overall across the board, because we wouldn't have all these mandates. You could customize your coverage. We wouldn't have so many subsidies, and that would be the solution, right? Except the problem is that Republicans, as you can clearly tell, are not going to do that. Why is that? Because first of all, the Senate GOP just sucks. Okay, they're useless. But I also think, secondly, it's worth noting, much like the Democrats on this issue, they're paid off by who? The medical lobby, the pharmaceutical lobby, maybe the insurance companies to some degree. I don't know. But the point is, the uniparty in Washington has a vested interest in making sure that health insurance stays expensive for the American people. I'm not trying to talk like a socialist. What I'm trying to explain to people is that when it comes to the current monopoly, right, and all the subsidies that these companies are receiving, and it's not capitalism, right? It's not a free market solution, but because we basically have like a corporate oligarchy in a sense with the insurance and the hospitals and the pharmaceutical drugs and all that going on, that I don't see how the Republicans would actually move forward to do something, right? You saw what happened last time they tried to repeal Obamacare, and do they have the time? Are they really going to figure out before 2026? I don't have a lot of faith in that either, right? But that's why I'm kind of in a conundrum on this, because on one hand, if you just give the Democrats what they want and keep the status quo going on healthcare, I would say that is a better option than just letting the tax credits expire and also not presenting an alternative solution, right? But the better solution, but then at the same time, if you do that, the MAGA voters are going to say, well, why'd you just give the Democrats what they wanted? So that's also a crappy solution. So there's this issue where it's like, I don't know exactly what I would say the Republicans truly should do here. And that's why I'm asking you guys in the comment section down below, pragmatically and realistically, right? What do you think Republicans should do? Because I actually think if the Republicans said right now, we're going to present Trump care, right? Our own alternative to Obamacare that's going to be significantly cheaper and better quality of coverage for everyone. That would be the amazing moment where you could wipe out a generation of Democrat arguments about healthcare, because they're always screeching at Republicans on this and they think they're so morally superior as a party for it and they're more popular with the American people, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? Republicans could actually present a healthcare alternative, but they're not going to do that, right? So some people say end the filibuster, right? Trump's been calling for that. I've principally supported that for all of his presidency, right? Because I think that, hey, the country's not going to be saved basically by the centrist politics, okay? Debt's going to slide off a roof if you need to have 60 votes. Immigration's never going to get solved. Something like as simple even as voter ID, you can't pass without 60 votes. But at the same time, okay, realistically, the Senate Republicans are not going to abolish the filibuster. I'll tell you why. Because first of all, it's sort of a common consensus among the uniparty that the filibuster is their excuse to get nothing of consequence done, first of all. And then secondly, even if they did get rid of the filibuster to pass the continuing resolution, you know, if you're going to go the nuclear option route, because obviously if you abolish the filibuster, then the Democrats can, you know, next time they have a trifecta, they can easily do whatever they want as well. You have to basically blitz conservative legislation, right? If you're going to take the radical quote unquote approach, you need to pass radical amounts of legislation. But obviously, as you saw during Big Beautiful Bill, I don't think the Senate GOP is going to do that either, right? So even if they got rid of it, they would not use the moment to do what actually you need to follow through it with if you abolish the filibuster. So there's an argument to be made because of the fecklessness of the Senate GOP. It's better to keep the filibuster in place so that way the Democrats can't just easily take over the country essentially the next time they're in power. So I don't know. It's kind of a conundrum. I don't know what to really think about it. I would love to know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. I don't know exactly how this is really going to end. But, you know, again, that's the solution. That's a problem that you have, you know. if you get rid of the Obamacare tax subsidies and just open the government, the Democrats would be fine with that because they're like, okay, there's a cohort of people, as you saw in 2025 elections when it came to SNAP, that demographic of voters is going to be angry and they're going to weaponize that against you, right? So, but then then Republicans won't present their alternative either. So what do you do about it exactly? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts though. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to this channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.